Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Harmonizing Your AI Tools webinar. We're going to talk today a little bit about this kind of fragmented ecosystem of AI tools and how you can think about strategy within your organization and kind of harmonized governance of these tools. I'm really excited to talk about this subject today, get all sorts of questions about this all the time. So we're going to dive in here in a second. Just by way of some logistics, please go ahead throughout the conversation. Go ahead and put your questions about the topic, questions or comments in the chat window or in the Q&A panel. You can put your questions in either place, and Sharon, who's helping run the webinar, he'll be looking at those and making sure he feeds me those questions at the end. So we're going to get through this topic and provide some time at the end to answer some questions, and then let you get back to your work day. So again, just make sure you put your questions into that chat or into the Q&A throughout the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get started. Okay, just by way of introduction, I'm Daniel Whitenack. I'm CEO at a company called Prediction Guard. Just so you know where we're coming from, we primarily provide secure private AI systems for companies operating in regulation-heavy industries like manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, finance, etc. Here's a picture of a medic Copilot system being used in a military context. That's really kind of a great example of both privacy, security, sensitive use case, but also needing best-in-class AI. That's what we specialize in. But we also are working to contribute to various types of kind of AI best practices and education through the Practical AI podcast, which I co-host. So I'd recommend that you check that out, but also through academia, through Purdue University, which is local to us, and also bodies like OWASP and ML Commons, which we're involved with. Just a reminder, as we're getting started here, there are more webinars coming up. So on our Prediction Guard Llama page, there's another one coming up around choosing an AI model. There's a proliferation of AI models out there. How do you evaluate performance? How do you evaluate fit for your use case? Make sure you go ahead and sign up for that upcoming webinar, November 19th. It's going to be virtual at 11 a.m. And also, if you are local or not local around the kind of Midwest of the United States, we're sponsoring and helping with the Midwest AI Summit, which is happening November 13th in Indianapolis, Indiana. Just because you're participating in this webinar or viewing the video from this webinar, I want to provide you with a discount link for this summit. Just use this Midwest AI 75 for 75% off registration for the Midwest AI Summit. It's going to be a really cool element of this where you'll actually get to sit down one-on-one with experienced AI practitioners to talk about your use case, get feedback on your strategy, get kind of free advising essentially, along with great speakers and other things. So go ahead and make sure that you're signed up for one or both of those things that are coming up in the future. But let's go ahead and start talking about this topic of harmonizing AI tools by just really setting the stage of like, what is the problem that we're talking about here? Why is there a need to harmonize AI tools, and why does it seem like this is a challenge? And I just did a bit of research and looking around on the internet prior to this webinar to see, hey, what does the AI landscape, AI tool landscape look like? And when you do that, you're presented with pictures like this. Hey, here's the AI agents market landscape, and there's like a bajillion things that, bunches and bunches of tools that you can use for AI agents. And then you can drill down into, hey, what does the AI landscape look like for legal tech, for example? And there's a huge number of other tools that are domain specific. Or what do we look at for like from a trusted news source for Forbes? This is one thing that they came out around apps and infrastructure for AI. So really, there's just this huge proliferation of tools, some of which do very specific things, some of which are general, some of which are verticalized, some of which, are for particular business functions, some of which are agents related, some of which are chatbots, automations, low code, no code tools, etc. And along with that problem, this kind of proliferation of tools, which seems in itself kind of hard to parse through and get through, you're presented with things like this from Gartner. We talked about this on the podcast sometime this last year. This is the hype cycle curve for AI from Gartner. And there's a bunch of things on here, some of which before I looked at this Gartner hype cycle, I literally did not know what these things were. And I work in AI every day of my life and have been working in AI since like 2011. And sometimes I kind of hardly know what some of these things are. Generative AI, they have kind of riding through this disillusionment kind of up to the plateau of productivity. But there's all these other things like AI agents and AI Trism and all of these other things that people are talking about. And it's just really hard in this kind of evolving landscape, which is represented by this graph, and kind of a fragmented landscape, which is represented by those kind of app tool agent pictures. It's kind of hard to know, just like if you're a company operating in any industry, how do you deal with this kind of constant onslaught of tools? How do you harmonize your strategy around these tools? How do you know what to spend time on? How do you know how to govern those, etc.? So that's really kind of the problem that we're talking about. Now, what we're going to do is kind of set the stage of maybe what not to do, and then we'll kind of set the stage for what we should potentially be doing and how you can develop a mental model for kind of navigating your way through this, crazy landscape. So in terms of AI harmonization and like dealing with this kind of proliferation of tools, there's a few things that I've observed that I think are not that helpful to do, and in some ways kind of become problematic for your organization. So a few of these that I'd like to highlight just briefly before we hop into the positive side of things is, first of all, pretending like kind of wholesale blocking of AI tool use is going to do anything kind of useful or much at all really in your organization. So kind of top-down blocking of AI could come from kind of a governance or legal side where you basically say, no one should use AI things until we figure out what to do with AI stuff, or maybe no one should use AI things, period. And the reality is that workers, regardless of where they're at in your organization, in HR, in engineering, in other places, they know these tools help them be more productive workers. They already know that. They've already been hands-on with AI, and they will continue to use these tools to, help their jobs. And this is what people kind of call shadow AI. So people are going to use AI tools, the cat's out of the bag, if you will. And so, not saying that no policy, you shouldn't have any policy around use, but what I'm saying is that you can only block so much, and people are going to use AI tools because they find them useful. A second kind of approach that you see is kind of a top-down instruction for use of kind of certain approved tools. Now, I actually think some kind of top-down instruction or governance around approval of tools is useful. And I've seen even in our customers, some of that work well. But this would be the case where you basically say, or we as an organization have looked at these two tools, and these are the two tools that we're going to allow people to use related to AI for all things and for all time. And the problem with that is, like I say, the landscape is constantly evolving and sort of no one knows what the killer AI app is yet. So really what you may want to think about is having a procedure for approving tools, but not necessarily kind of a very restricted set of tools, especially when these tools kind of don't evolve with the rest of the landscape and you get stuck with inferior tools, because then again, people are just going to use whatever tools that they may find useful. Um, at the same time, you really don't want to get into the mode of letting everyone just pick and choose anything that they want to use, however they might want to use that. This can produce some really problematic sorts of behavior, maybe data flow into third parties that becomes problematic, especially when you're dealing with kind of compliance related things or regulatory related things. So you definitely don't want to throw out your data security policy or your posture towards data security, and just let kind of everyone pick and choose what they want to use. And so there's some type of balance to be struck here. And that's really what we're going to kind of spend the rest of the time talking about, is how you can lean into AI tool use, the mental model that you can have around kind of the landscape of AI tools, and maybe a mental model for how you can think about approval, or or blocking of tools in certain cases, and allow people to proceed accordingly. So the first thing that we want to get to is going from that very scattered landscape view of AI tools, which are kind of AI tools for everything. There's a bajillion on a big screen. In some ways, when you look at that, you're like, well, I guess I'll just kind of randomly point at one and try it and see what happens. We actually want to have a better mental model, not just a big sheet of logos, but we want to have a better mental model for what AI tools kind of exist and how we can put them in certain categories such that we can that we can work towards approval or work towards integrating these in our business processes in a responsible way. So in terms of a simplified mental model, this is kind of what I want to propose as a mental model that you can have, that I've been using for some time. And it really just involves kind of these 5 categories of things. So what I want to do is explain kind of what's going on in this figure, and how you can think about the categories of AI things that you might encounter, AI tools that you might encounter. At the very bottom of this kind of stack is what I would call AI platform. Now, AI platform could be something that is living in third-party infrastructure or something you self-host. Both of those are possibilities. Of course, Prediction Guard works mostly on that self-hosted side. But an AI platform is really, you can think about it where those models are living that power all sorts of different AI functionality, from custom development to low code, no code tools, etc. All of those will need access to models that are hosted in a certain way, that have an API on top of them, that are governed in some sort of way, that are monitored, that have, reasonable uptime, that have scaling to the scale that you need to use them. So at its bottom layer, this kind of AI platform layer would consist of things like, on the closed source side, something like OpenAI's AI platform or the Anthropic AI platform or Gemini. On the open source side would be things like maybe Prediction Guard or OpenShift AI, or various open source model hosting capabilities and that sort of thing. So at this bottom layer is the AI platform. It's where the models live, like language models, vision models, embeddings, re-rank. It's also where governance features can live, like safeguards or continuous monitoring, or access control, like API access control and monitoring. So that's the AI platform, and that's going to power various kind of manifestations of AI tools. Now, if we move up to the AI application or tool level, there are various categories of kind of software as a service or SaaS tools and self-hosted tools that live above that AI platform and can be powered by any number of those AI platforms. So I'm just going to start from the left here. The first major category of tools you can have are kind of general purpose chat, right? These would be very generic chatbots like a chat GPT, or on the self-hosted side like an open web UI, that would allow you to generically interact with models. Maybe do some kind of cool features like web search or code execution or agentic kind of workflows. But these are generic. They will kind of do everything from just give you feedback on your, therapy notes that you wrote down, to writing poetry, to writing, Python code. There's any number of things that can happen in these generic, general purpose chat systems. So that's kind of a first level of things that can exist. And again, these require some AI platform under the hood. Whether you're using Open Web UI or a ChatGPT, ChatGPT is not a model. It's not an AI platform. It makes calls into an AI platform to access model functionality. And then it itself is a SaaS application. It's a product, right? Okay. The next category, kind of moving to the right here in our figure, is what I would kind of generally call an AI integration. These are existing products or tools, let's say a Notion or a Slack, et cetera, Workday, where these are not AI systems or AI tools per se, but they are integrating AI features. So in the messaging interface of Slack, now there's AI features, or in Notion, et cetera, or even in self-hosted systems that are often self-hosted, like a Siemens Teamcenter, that's used in manufacturing, could have AI integrations, right, in that software. Again, for the most part, those AI integrations are having AI functionality that would connect into an underlying AI platform, which could be one or multiple AI platforms, or optional AI platforms. Moving again to the right, we have low code, no code systems. So on the first two that I talked about, general purpose chat and AI integrations, for the most part, you are not really building anything in those. You're just using them. You are a consumer of the AI functionality in the general purpose chat or in the AI integration. Now we're getting into territory with these low code, no code tools like an N8N or a Gumloop or a agent builder from OpenAI, or LangFlow, Diffie, etc. These are low code, no code systems that allow you to, without doing much coding or any coding, build a custom workflow for an automation or a custom assistant. Used to, we might call these like GPT builders, right? In the kind of OpenAI world, but these are more generic now, right? This would allow you to build a custom automation to, I drop a file in this SharePoint folder. When that happens, I want to analyze that, pull out this information, and put it in a database. And you could build that with kind of a low code, no code environment. Or I want to create a custom assistant for onboarding people in HR, right? You can do that through one of these builders. Again, this will rely on a separate AI platform to power that low code, no code application, which is itself the tool. And then finally, moving on to the right-hand side, you kind of get to the ultimate customization, if you will, which is building your own applications, your own AI-powered applications via various frameworks or language SDKs, etc. This would be kind of the territory of software engineers who are building your own custom tools internally or for your customers, or your own software integrations. But those are custom built with frameworks like LangChain or Llama Index, or just SDKs like the Vercel AI SDK or something like that. You're building your own AI application. So here, all of that kind of big category or big sheet of logos, which are your AI tools, they all can kind of fit into one of these categories, I would say. And this is kind of a simplified, but I think it's a useful thing for you to have in your mind. So when you're encountering a new tool, you should think which of these categories does it fit in? And certainly there are gray areas. I don't mean to say that there's not gray areas, but generally this is kind of the world that we're living in, at least as of now. So try to get yourself to think about, how do I categorize this thing that I'm looking at? And note, there's a lot of words on this page, but at a high level, really what I'm saying here is that regardless of what AI platform you're dealing with, you can always kind of ask, whether it's consumption based or self-hosted. You can always ask kind of around the data protection policies and IP constraints. So there is a lot of confusion at this AI platform layer where some people would say, oh, well, I have a certain enterprise version of Microsoft Suite for Copilot or Azure OpenAI that still uses closed OpenAI models, right? So there are actually IP constraints and some confusion around the output of that data, or the data that is output from those systems, and whether you can actually own and do whatever you want with that data. And so you just want to understand, what are the terms of use of those sorts of things for a certain AI platform. Is this something I can bring into my infrastructure? Is this something I have control of? Is it just used on a consumption basis? Is it fixed price, et cetera? And then for those higher level AI applications, you can always ask those questions, what underlying AI platform does this use? So when someone on your team brings you a new application or a new tool and they're saying, hey, we want to use this tool in HR, we think it's great. Regardless of what tool that is, from any vendor, you can always ask, hey, what is the underlying AI platform that's powering this? And potential answers to that are, we host our own AI platform, so no data goes to third parties. Our tool uses OpenAI, and so all your data flowing through this tool will go to OpenAI, or some combination of various things, right? So you can really always ask those data flow questions and get to the bottom of some of that kind of data flow, where it lives at rest, where it goes over the wire, what are the terms of use, et cetera. A lot of these AI applications could also be self-hosted internally, at least in many cases. Something like a LangFlow or something like that, or an open web UI, is something that you can bring into your own infrastructure. Some are not, right? Like a Gumloop or others. Okay, so step one, we kind of developed our little mental model of how to categorize these AI tools, what those different categories mean. Now let's talk about a small but very important, I think, number of constraints that you may want to consider as you consider each of these tools. Again, what we're trying to develop is not a policy for you to say we're only going to approve two tools forever because they fit our constraints. But what you want to have is a mental model and a set of constraints that you can evaluate tools as they come along, because you're going to encounter an increasing number of AI tools. So the kind of constraints that I've found most useful to consider as you're trying to think about which tools you can harmonize and bring into your environment are really these. Kind of, it comes down to data flow. What stays inside of your company and what goes outside of your company, and in particular, what kind of goes outside of your company just over the wire, and what data actually lives at rest outside of your company, because that could imply certain breaches of data, et cetera. Also, what data is coming back into your company's infrastructure, and what terms of use and restrictions are based on, are implied with that data as it comes back to you. Like I say, you could use a tool that uses OpenAI under the hood, and the data that's coming back to you, technically, you can't do anything you want with that data because it's subject to their terms and service or terms of use, and you might not be able to, for example, train your own model on that data or utilize it in certain ways. You want to obviously consider your kind of compliance and regulatory burdens, also the deployment and usage environment. Of course, there may be constraints that you have that this tool needs to run in our manufacturing environment, and that manufacturing environment is air-gapped or on-prem or something like that. That is going to restrict kind of the set of tools that you can use, but there's certainly great tools you can use in that sort of environment. Whereas in other cases, it may not matter. You're processing data that has no IP considerations. It's all public data. Everything can flow to third parties, and that's completely fine. The other thing that you want to consider, which I think is sometimes messy for people, is cost. And what I mean by that is often people kind of try a tool in a free trial way or something like that and see, oh yeah, this is cool, this could work. It's not always clear what the long-term kind of ongoing cost of usage is for those sorts of tools. So, for example, with a Copilot or something like that, you're going to deal with per seat licensing, and you do your Copilot trial with a few people, but then you want to scale out to 10,000 people in your organization. That per seat cost all of a sudden becomes quite a hassle. But not only that, there's sort of hidden costs in relation to integration with this data source or that data source and the flow of data. And in other cases, if you're self-hosting some of these tools, there's going to be a large initial cost and a break-even point where, you want to get to a certain level of usage where you start to justify that fixed cost, right? And so these are all considerations that you want to think about in terms of constraints. Okay, in terms of this underlying AI platform that's going to power your AI tools or applications, however you're going to harmonize those, if you notice in that figure that I showed before, really everything, all of those tools, whether it's from the general chat application to the integration to the low-code, no-code tools to the custom development, all of those things will depend on one or more AI platforms. And so really kind of part of the crux of harmonization of these tools is not so much harmonizing down to one or a couple tools, but harmonizing down to what AI platform is going to power those tools, because once you know that, you can centralize some things like monitoring, observability, governance, access control, alerting, etc., through that AI platform, however they handle those things. So in OpenAI, certainly there's tools on OpenAI that can help you with that. There's tools within the admin panel of OpenAI that can allow you to understand certain usage per API key, etc. On the prediction guard side, you can provision your own API keys. All of those models that are used by whatever applications will be logged in terms of security or privacy alerts through our central admin panel. So whatever AI platform you're using should have a way for you to kind of control these things in a centralized way, and still have kind of a blossoming of tools that are all powered by this single AI platform. So again, just visually, all of these things kind of flow down to that AI platform. Now, here I just put this, I'm not going to read out all of these things. We're going to share the slides at the end of this webinar. So don't feel like you have to get a screenshot. We'll share a link to the slides at the end of the webinar so you have this. But in terms of kind of self-hosted AI platforms versus consumption-based API platforms, these are just some kind of trade-offs and considerations that you should have. And again, these will depend on your industry, on the situation you're in terms of things like data flow. Obviously, if you're self-hosting, no data flows to any third parties, whereas in the other cases it does. Regulatory-wise, that's kind of a mixed bag in terms of these consumption APIs. It's something you want to consider. Cost-wise, like I mentioned, there's kind of a break-even point for these self-hosted AI systems versus consumption APIs, which kind of, balloon as you use them more. and then kind of the deployment usage environment, which we already talked about. So again, I'll provide this in the slides. This is something you can take back and kind of parse through and help you figure out what is that AI system that I'm using and how is it powering the various tools that we're using. Okay, so now, just in terms of summary, what we've done is we've set up in kind of step one this mental model of AI tools in various categories. We've talked about constraints that you should be considering. We've talked about kind of trade-offs between different AI platforms where the AI platform powers these various tools that you're harmonizing in your context. One thing that I want to really encourage you all as you're listening to this webinar is to actually encourage AI usage within your organization, such that you can view more transparently how people are using AI and kind of try to steer that AI usage in ways that fits your constraints. So what I mean by that is if you are kind of cracking down on AI usage, people are going to use this in the shadows and you will never know about it, right? What you really want to say is, we know AI is going to transform our company. We know you all are using AI and we want you to use AI. You know, we would love to understand like how you're using AI and what tools you're using. And in that sense, kind of encourage transparency, because what that will then allow you to do is say, oh, cool, HR is wanting to use this tool. And there's a way for them to use that tool or a tool like that in with an AI platform that fits our constraints, like I said before. So whether you're self-hosting that AI platform or you have a preferred enterprise license with one, there's often a pathway to take what those people are using on the application side and plug it into the platform, which allows you to harmonize that with other things that are happening across your organization. So in order to kind of demonstrate that, in these kind of last set of examples that I'm going to provide, I want to actually show you some examples of how I might approach a few of those things, and even how we're approaching some of that with our customers, our partners, within our own organization, et cetera. And so I'm going to take three examples that fit into different of these categories. So the first of these examples that I'm going to use are AI code assistants. So I'm sure it's not everyone on the call, but some of you on the webinar have engineering teams, you have developers. They all want to use vibe coding tools and AI code assistants, right? And so one of those very popular tools is called Cursor. This is black screen is basically what Cursor looks like. Now for Cursor, here I've actually set up Cursor locally on my desktop, and let's say that someone like within your development team, they say, hey, we love using Cursor, and you're like, oh boy, like where is that data going? Because by default in that development cycle, the way you would set up Cursor is that data would flow outside of your organization, into third-party systems, into closed model providers. That data coming back then is subject to their terms of use. And this IP question gets very gray and questionable, right? And when you are a software vendor or when you're creating software internally, and that's a key part of your IP, that can be very concerning. And so how I would approach this is come to your customers and say, cool, we love that you are exploring AI around like coding and code assistance and vibe coding. I see you're using Cursor. Hey, we've actually have an AI platform under the hood. Now, in our case, for our customers, obviously that would be Prediction Guard. And that's in place. Let's harmonize this tool with the AI platform that we're already using. And so within Cursor, there's actually an extension called Klein. There's some other ones as well. But you can actually go into that extension and I can plug in that extension to my actual AI platform that I'm using. In this case, Prediction Guard. I could provide my API key. Here, I'm using a GPT OSS model, which is privately hosted. So everything that I'm doing here in Cursor is flowing through a model that I control that's running in my infrastructure. Um, and so when I go here and I ask, to vibe code, let's say, create a project for a RAG API using Fast API and LanceDB. Um, okay. And so this now is starting my vibe coding agent um, through this AI tool, which is an AI code assistant, but it's harmonized or it's plugged into the AI platform that I'm comfortable with as an organization and that I'm hosting internally. So it's now working in the background on this, and you can see it's starting to, populate. I can save this. It created its own, requirements file for the project. It's now going to start, creating the code for this API with Fast API, and it's really great. It's a great experience. But again, it's plugged into the AI system that I control, right? Okay, so that's example one. AI code assistance. Example two, I'm going to use is one of these AI integrations. So this is an existing software platform that has AI features developing within it. And so the example that I'm going to use is Workday. Some of you in certain organizations may or may not use Workday. Workday is an HR platform that's quite popular, and they've developed certain AI integrations. But what's interesting is within Workday, you can have this is a SaaS platform, right? But actually, there's a thing called Workday Extend, um, which allows you to do low code app development within Workday and actually create automations. And we actually have customers that plug this Workday Extend into our AI platform, or they use the default in Workday. And again, it's possible to connect this existing tool to your private AI system, so you can use the power of what Workday is creating in this kind of low code app builder, but also have it route to the AI platform where you have your centralized monitoring, which has been approved by your CISO, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then finally, what I'll show is just an assistant builder. So this would fit that low code, no code kind of environment. And what I'll show here is I've got a LangFlow tenant up. So this is a low code, no code builder. And let's say someone comes to you in your organization and says, hey, we have low code, no code stuff that we're building in N8N or Gumloop or something like that. And they're using an AI that's plugged into an AI platform that's sort of not under your purview, and you don't have, monitoring over, et cetera. You can say, "Oh, that's great. We'd love to enable more of this low code, no code development. But we have this way for you to do this low code, no code development that's plugged into our AI platform." So you can see actually here you can preload LangFlow with example templates for low code, no code development, which are plugged into the AI platform of your choice. And so the goal here is you want to make it easy for all of these folks to develop against your, do the things that they want to do, this low code, no code development, but develop against the AI platform that you're using. So here I've got, my Prediction Guard embeddings component. I can have my LLM, et cetera here. So you can actually preload this kind of environment with templates that again allow people to do what they want to do, but are plugged into the AI platform that you're comfortable with and, is approved internally. What you wouldn't want to do is just point them to something like this and give it to them from scratch and say, "Hey, good luck." Because that's not going to be easy to use. Their experience is not going to be great, and they'll just default back to their shadow AI use. You actually want to go in here and maybe do the work of creating some example templates or demonstrate this, because now it's very easy for me to create a simple agent or a RAG system using kind of approved tooling. And everyone in the organization doesn't have to use that. So kind of the lesson here is you do want to provide a pathway to connection to the AI platform that's approved internally to kind of harmonize these tools, but you don't want to make that essentially behave worse than those things that they can just get out there from any source and use on their personal accounts. You want to actually provide a kind of seamless way for them to use these tools in a kind of approved or governed way. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and then turn to questions. In the slides, just as a reminder, you can join our Discord server if you want to chat with us anytime, but also you can reach out on our Getting Started page. We'd love to have any conversation with you, even if it's just we can be a good sounding board for you. We have a number of upcoming webinars. Like I say, the Choosing Your Model webinar, the Midwest AI Summit, all of these are great chances for you to just learn generally. Of course, a wide range of practical AI podcast episodes that are hopefully helpful for you, over, I think, 320 or something now. So I appreciate all of you joining. Again, a couple things coming up. Make sure you sign up for the next webinar. Join us at the Midwest AI Summit, and I will stop sharing my screen and turn over to the questions here. All right, scrolling down. Okay. So, first question, what are some of the other examples of AI platforms you mentioned? Prediction Guard, for open source, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic considered AI platforms. Yeah, so on the AI platform side, basically you have managed third-party AI platforms. This would be like the OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, etc. And then you have ones that can be in your own infrastructure and be self-hosted. That would be like a Prediction Guard or an OpenShift AI type of scenario that runs kind of in your cloud VPC or on-prem or in a data center. Both of these sets of AI platforms provide models. They provide certain basic functionality, maybe like document extraction or transcription or safeguarding, etc. Those kind of basic core components on which you can build and power rich AI applications or plug in existing applications. And so really it's just a matter on those AI platforms. On one side, you're sending your data to third parties. You're charged kind of on this consumption basis. You're subject to their terms and service. In the other case, you have this self-hosted infrastructure, which is more privacy conserving and kind of fixed price. But you have only access to models that you can self-host. Thankfully, a lot of those models, like I showed the example with Cursor, we're self-hosting that. Basically, for most business workflows and use cases, there's really no difference performance-wise in terms of what you can do in either of those cases. It's really more about the privacy security concerns and the cost model in terms of what works within your use case. Okay. With so many new AI products emerging monthly, how can companies keep their strategy resilient to tool churn? Great question. So this is definitely a problem because, new tools pop up. And one thing that definitely happens as well is like the AI platforms sometimes release their own versions of these things. And the question is, well, then, do we abandon the tools that we brought in, or there may be a new class of tools that emerge out of that? What I would kind of recommend in terms of resiliency is really two things. One is first focus on that AI platform and setting that up in a way that will work for your organization. Because the reality is that no one knows all of what the killer AI apps are at this point. Start from that bottom layer and understand what is the AI platform that's going to power the various things that we do. And at the application layer, just realize that those things will turn over a little bit and we don't know exactly what will live there. So it would be better to start from that perspective than to start up above at the application layer and say, hey, this tool in legal tech is our tool that we're going to use, and in reality, it disappears in a few months, right? And so that focus on that kind of platform layer. The other thing that I would recommend is whatever kind of platform or AI applications that you're using. I think it would be very wise for organizations to make that as vendor agnostic as possible or model builder agnostic as possible. And the reason for that is there just has been a lot of volatility with model providers like OpenAI and others. The reality is any given model provider, whether that's OpenAI or DeepSeek or others, they're not going to have the best model forever. And so to de-risk your kind of harmonization of tools, really you would ideally like to focus on tools that are model agnostic, and you could actually swap out the models internally, or an AI platform that allows you to swap out models or have access to models from various model families. Okay. Many teams struggle with, next question. Many teams struggle with the unpredictable costs of API-based AI services. What frameworks or metrics can help forecast and compare long-term ROI against self-hosting? Really good question. I've heard this multiple times, actually. I've heard stories, for example, like, hey, we gave our engineering team a budget of 60K a month for AI API usage, and they blew that in 1 week. And now, now what do I do? And this is a problem with these kind of ballooning AI costs. And some of these are kind of hidden and hard to predict because the actual model call might be cheap, but then you want to surround that with maybe safeguards or data integrations or other things that cost money as well. So for example, if I just give an example, like with Prediction Guard, we model out costs based on kind of how much throughput you might need to have through your AI system over time, what hardware and compute infrastructure is required for that. We have estimates of that, and the cost of the actual software product license. And generally, that's more of that fixed cost. There may be a small amount of scaling with the compute cost, but not a crazy amount as with the API. So then you have that kind of plateau of that fixed cost. With the consumption-based API, when you're prototyping, you may be making like a few calls at a time to your consumption-based API, and that costs you 3 cents or something, which doesn't give you a good sense. And so really what you have to do is look in detail at the pricing model of the API platform that you're using, but don't just model out the model calls, but also the things around the periphery. So any data integrations, any per seat costs, any safeguarding costs that are going to be required as you take this to production. And then it's a matter of trying to understand, hey, in production, whatever that means for me, is that like how many interactions am I expecting? And then you can kind of backtrack out what that cost might be. Okay. Another question, how can we avoid shadow AI, teams using unapproved tools without stifling creativity and speed? Basically, what I would say is your team is already using AI in so many ways. Just accept that. It can be hard to accept because you don't have control over all that, but they're already using it. What I think is a best case scenario is where you approach that and say, hey, we are excited about AI transformation in our organization. We want you all to be using AI. We are so intrigued to understand like how you're using AI. does anyone have some good use cases, and carry on that conversation, encourage supervisors to have that conversation with their direct reports and gather a bit of that information. Because again, many of these uses of AI aren't necessarily things you're not able to harmonize with your posture around AI. It's just a matter of knowing what those are and providing a very good route to AI usage with an AI platform or a harmonization that fits your company posture, et cetera. So that's what I would say to that. Really appreciate everyone joining today for this webinar. It's been a lot of fun. I think Sharon will share the link to the slides, and we'll also follow up with the recording and link to the slides via email. Really been a good time. Thank you all for the great questions, and we'll talk to you soon.